I'm more than a little taken aback by this event this evening. When Arvin first spoke to me about the fact that the event was planned and asked if I might say a few words afterwards, I visualized perhaps 25 or 30 people would be getting together and swapping lies about our life at Purdue when we were in school there. And I did not dream that this sort of an event would take place. And I would like to say in that regard that I think we've all had a great day for ourselves in what's been presented to us about the chemical engineering activities at the university. And the fact that the event has proven so large and so popular, I give all the credit in the world to Arvin, and I think he deserves a real round of applause for what he's done for us. I really appreciate it, and I know the rest of us who are largely alumni or related to alumni also are very, very appreciative of what you've done. I'm going to keep my remarks very brief because I think we've been talked to enough today, and fatigue can set in. The one thing that I became very conscious of as I thought about this event, and the time span that was involved in what's being celebrated here this evening, is that I went back 100 years in the history of what I know in the chemical industry, and I'll address a question to you broadly that I won't ask the people from DuPont. Many of my DuPont friends are here, but I ask you, how many of you know or were a part of, in your industrial experience, any company that's been around 100 years? You DuPont people don't have to put your hands up, but there are a few, but not many. And as a matter of fact, my speech is on the subject of reinventing yourself. DuPont was a little more than 100 years old itself when this school was started here at Purdue. It started off in the early part of the 19th century, the first decade of the 19th century, and making black powder. And the exigencies of time forced the company to keep modernizing its powder supply, and it modernized it into the cellulosic powders that became popular in the middle of the 19th century and played a part in the civilization that developed and in the war that developed eventually between the states. And finally, after the startup of this school in the early years of the 20th century, it was a very, very large explosive manufacturer and played a very, very important part in our country's participation in World War I, a part that was so big that it actually contributed a lot to public criticism of the company and a lot of talk about a merchants of death syndrome. Shortly after World War I, people who were running the DuPont company, it was still largely the DuPont family, decided it was time for reinvention. And they established a group to attempt to see what was new or possible in the chemical industry that was not related to powder at all, explosives at all. And this resulted primarily from the initial inventions by Wallace Carruthers in a big extension into polymer science that was in fibers and plastics and in many other forms. And the essence of it was that DuPont reinvented itself completely so that the explosives thing eventually fell by the wayside and is no no longer part of the DuPont experience. And I believe that the message that came to me from that I think is worth passing on to you, particularly to those of you whose companies have less than a 100-year time span, that there is a constant need for reinvention of what it is you do and what it is you supply to society in order to make your contribution to that society visible, viable, and continuing. You can see every day that institutions that fail to do this will be under fire, and one that all of us are probably very familiar with today. I'm frankly doubtful, or I worry a lot, that Eastman will survive. That they made a wonderful business and they're a wonderful company based on silver halide film, but they weren't there when the whole thing moved away from them. And whether they will be able to turn anything around and survive remains to be seen. The lesson for all of us is that we cannot be satisfied as parts of the chemical industry. We cannot be satisfied with the product line we've got. We've got to be inventing to attempt to keep our product line ready for the next 100 years. And I was going to make a few additional remarks that related to my personal experience in coming to this university when I was 17 years old, 17 years and a few months. And I was going to say just a few things about a number of people and the effect they had on our career. But I'm going to drop them all and just say I was influenced greatly by Edward Elliott, who was the president of the university. He made a speech to everyone who came in this initial class in July of 1944. And I was 17 years old, and Elliott spoke in the Hall of Music to perhaps 100 or 200 people who were new freshmen that year. And he sympathized with them, he said, for the fact that most of them had arrived on the train in the last day or so and were met by the one or two taxi cabs that the city of Lafayette had to provide. And that remark was greeted with great enthusiasm and humor by the group, and it made a great impression on me that here was the president of the university, and he had a sense of humor. Who could imagine that the president of a university would have a sense of humor? And I had similar experiences over the years, and I'm not going to go into them in the interest of time, but with A.A. Potter, who was dean of engineering, a very, very fine man, had a great impression on me. I saw and knew John Bray, who was head of the school when I first came here. He was not even a ChemE, he was a Met. And I think one of the principal reasons why the school was known as the Chemical and Metallurgical Engineering Building at the time. All of us know Benny Shreve. And do all of you know why he's called Benny Shreve, not to his face, but to anyone else? He was a strong proponent of the matter of beneficiation of ores and spoke about that so enthusiastically that it bored most people, but it got him this wonderful nickname. Joe Smith was very, very kind to me, very, very helpful to me. One person who had a great influence on me, who not part of ChemE, was Frank Martin. You all remember Frank Martin? Well, everybody who came to school at the outset in those days had to take chemistry. That was your first year. There was chemistry, and then there was engineering chemistry. And engineering chemistry was run by Frank Martin. In those days, if you were a graduate of a school in Indiana and applied to Purdue, you were in. And it was up to Frank, I found, in his freshman chemistry course, to sort out the people who belonged here from the people who were not. And he was a wonderful, wonderful person and had a terrible reputation amongst the people that didn't like the fact that half the people that he gave the course to could not make it. And I'll end this remark with another person who had a great influence on me in the chemistry part of the building, was Herschel Hunt. This is going to kill Marilyn, I want you to know that. But she and I were starting to get acquainted in those days, and we were both taking physical chemistry at the same time. And Herschel saw that we were apparently paying more attention to him to ourselves than we were to him, and he, not forcibly but vocally, very strongly separated us in the chemistry lecture hall at that time, and that taught me a great deal also. But thank you very much. We enjoyed it.